I've been working on building my very own home theater here on the channel, and we are finally just about done. Before we can do a final overview of the system though, there's something that I need to get set up, and that is my zones. What are zones? Well, we know with a home theater receiver, we're going to be able to have surround sound. In other words, multiple speakers placed around us to give us that fully immersive experience. But something that is awesome about a lot of the latest receivers out on the market is they allow us to add separate zones of audio. Some receivers will also allow us to add separate zones of video. The advantage of having multiple zones is we can play different audio levels between the different zones of the same source, or we can even play different sources per zone of audio and video. What's going on, guys? I'm Mark. Welcome to CarAudioFabrication. In this video, I want to explain how I used zones in my system and give you some ideas for how you could use it in yours. So before we get into the content, I do want to thank our sponsor for this episode, Crutchfield. I have a unique application in my basement where my home theater is, where I needed more advanced zone control. I had put together a layout of what I was looking to do, and I was able to talk to a Crutchfield home theater expert and explain to him exactly what my goals were. He carefully analyzed those goals and gave me some really valuable feedback, which really helped me out on picking the right gear for my application for this system. Crutchfield has been my go-to source for car audio gear for many, many years, long before I ever started the YouTube channel here, and they've been just as helpful for picking out home theater gear. If you are planning a home theater system, definitely check them out, see what they have to offer. You guys can learn more at the link down in the video description and take advantage of a special offer. So we're here at the back side of the AV rack. I built this rack with all the different components in the last video for the home theater project here on the channel, and I wanted to actually look at the back side of the receiver here to give you a better idea how the zone control connections work. Now, on the audio side of things, there are a couple of different ways to connect the other zones. The first is we can send a signal, an audio signal, out to a separate amplifier or even another receiver, and for that we're going to use these RCA outputs. On this receiver here, obviously we have zone 2 connections and zone 3 for left and right signal. For my application, I'm sending a signal to a separate amplifier that I'm using for the zone 2 speakers. Now the other option is this bottom row here. These are the direct speaker outputs out of the receiver, so all of these are powered by the receiver itself. If we look at the bottom of these ones here, it says that they are assignable, and that's because these connections here I'm using for the height speakers, but these connections here I'm not using for the height speakers. I'm actually controlling zone 3 off of these, which I set up in the menu of the receiver. That's something that you definitely want to pay attention to, because let's say that you wanted to have 4 height speakers in your system, that might eliminate your possibilities of adding a separate powered zone off the receiver. Instead, you may have to use the signal out of the receiver to do that. When you're doing your shopping and picking out a receiver, I definitely recommend checking out the manual to see if the system design that you intend to use is going to be compatible. As far as different video zones goes, this is pretty straightforward. We're just going to use our HDMI out section. In this case, zone 1 is going to come out of monitor 1, and then for zone 2, we'll connect to this simple connection here, zone 2. And as a side note, we can also have an additional secondary monitor if we wanted to. This will display the same source as zone 1. Something you do want to look for though, and this is again covered usually in the manual, is to see if there's any restrictions between the resolution used between the different outputs. So in this case, on this receiver, we can do 8K output, which is obviously a resolution that isn't very common right now, but perhaps it may be more in the future. But it's worth noting that our zone 2 will only give us up to 4K of output. So let's go take a look at all the different zones now and see how I'm using them. So the way that I have my system set up is the first zone is everything that you're going to need for the home theater experience. So when we turn on zone number 1, we're going to get all the surround sound speakers. We get the 2 front left and right speakers, we get the center channel, we get the sub, we get the rear surround speakers, we get the in-ceiling Atmos speakers. And it's worth noting that if I did want to have more of kind of just the typical stereo musical listening experience, that is an option on this receiver that I can easily switch between full surround sound mode to just using the left and right speakers plus the sub. Most receivers allow you to do this, but definitely something to check into when you're shopping for one. Now for my system, this is zone number 2, and this is where things start to get fun, because on this zone, you can see I can have a separate video source playing. I could have the same video source playing. As an example, let's say we're watching a big game and I want to make sure when I walk over here behind the bar that I can still keep my eyes on the game. I could have it playing the same video source, Or I could have it playing a different video source. As an example, if there's two different sporting events going on at the same time, or if you wanted to entertain the kids on a separate TV, this TV could obviously be in a different room. It could be on a different level of the house depending on how long of a cable that you get. There are a lot of different options here. And of course, the audio level can also be controlled independently. It can be playing the same source. It can be playing a different source. Tons of different options here. Now think about this. This is something else I really like about having different video zones. Let's say that you're trying to get your hands on a PS5. I don't have one yet. I wish I did. This is a PS4 right now. It's just showing Battlefield 2042. What if we wanted to be able to use that PS5 on multiple different video sources in the house? So let's say that we want to play the PS5 on the big home theater sometimes, and let's say other times we just want to play it in our smaller game room. Rather than having to get two PS5s or moving the PS5 back and forth, we can just have the one receiver, have the PS5 connected into that, and we can send that video source to two different areas. The separate video zones is awesome. This really gives you some more functionality for how you can use your entertainment system throughout your home. Now this right here, this is my third zone, and this is just an audio zone. There's no video on this zone. You can see one of the speakers here. There's two speakers on this zone. This zone allows us to play music in our kids' play area. So we plan to use this third zone a couple of different ways. If we're having a big family get together or a party, we can have this zone playing the same music as the other two zones. That way the full basement is filled with sound. The other thing we could do is we could have a movie playing on the main zone, and we could have some kids' music playing over here in the playroom. I don't know that we'll do that all that often because they are close to each other, but there is that option. And the other thing we can do is, even if the other zones aren't being used, we can have music playing on just these two speakers. Now that's just how we plan to use our third zone. The other common thing that people like to do is you could run that speaker signal outside. You could use it with some outdoor speakers. And let's imagine that you're watching the game on the main zone and you're also cooking outside. You want to be able to keep listening to the game when you go outside to flip those patties. And by having an additional zone that's playing that same audio source, you could do that. Or you could just have the ambiance of other music playing outside. There are definitely a ton of different ways to use zones. So question of the episode, if you've already built a home theater system in the past, did you use zones? And if so, how did you use them? And if you're working on building your very own home theater system, do you think that you will include zones? I'd love to hear from you guys, so let me know. Don't forget, next time you are planning out a home theater system, you can get expert one-on-one advice from the advisors over at Crutchfield, help you pick out your system. If you guys want to learn more about them and take advantage of a special offer, check out that link down in the video description. If you'd like to see more of the build that I'm currently working on, you can check out the other videos here on the channel. As always, my friends, thank you guys for tuning in and watching.